Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back to Stress, the podcast to sustain your performance over time. I am super excited to have our next podcast guest on the show, and it's Courtney Anderson. Hi Courtney, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, me too. I'm very excited about this conversation. Well, let's start with the first question that I always ask all of my clients, my podcast guests. I just talked to a client, so I'm still in like the client mode in my head.
I get it.
Podcast guests. Where are you located? What time zone is it? And what have you been up to this morning?
So I am in Omaha, Nebraska. So dead center of the country. I'm in central time zone. So it's after lunch for me right now.
Nice.
What I've been doing so far today is I walk my boys to school. Nice. And that's kind of a wonderful way to start the day. It's slow and tender and just gorgeous because it's neat time with them. And then I walked 2 miles, and then I've been working on some stuff for my business, had some lunch and prepping a little bit to chat with you.
Nice. Very nice. And so tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yes. So my business is called Girl on Fire, and I have a background as a clinical social worker. So I worked as a clinical social worker for 15 years. I transitioned 2 years ago and I started my own business. So I coach women, and I really help women understand the origins of the patterns that they want to choose to change in their life. And then I help give them tools to really change those things. Okay. So I'm very action oriented. I'm driven. I'm decisive. And so that's really my edge and what I do in my coaching. So I work with one-on-one clients and I absolutely love it.
That's really great. Amazing. And how old are your boys?
They're 8 and 11. So they're in 3rd and 5th grade.
8 and 11. Okay. All right. That's nice. That's a really nice way to start the day. I usually try to go out with my dog, but because the air quality has been not amazing, I'm trying to not always do that anymore. To kind of like protect the health. It's crazy.
It is a balance. And, here where I live, I know you have snow there too, but the winters here are brutal. So I always think in my head, when it's the time of the year where it's okay to be outside and not dangerously cold, I need to walk them to school, right? Start my day that way, get outside, because I feel like it eases me into the day a little bit more. And it's not so abrupt, if that makes sense, just to walk leisurely, spend the time with them, getting them to school. And I'm just so grateful that I can do that.
Yeah, that's super nice. That's very nice. So your business is called Girls on Fire? Girl on Fire? Girl on Fire. And so what do you coach your clients most on?
So that's a great question. So typically I only work with women. And so typically the women I'm working with feel like in their personal or business life, they don't have to be entrepreneurs. A lot of my clients are. They feel like they're winging it. They feel unorganized. They feel unfulfilled. They don't really know what they want. They feel like they should have it figured out by now, right? Usually mid-30s to 40s, we all think we should kind of know what we're doing, but that's not how life works. And so there's a lot wrapped up in my clients feel like they don't know how to say no to things that don't work for them anymore. They don't know how to offload things. They just are in this hamster wheel of winging it, and they don't know how to offload things to, again, take the time to figure out what they want. So I really help them do that and understand how all this got started for them, and that it's okay and normal. And then let's start to get rid of some of this that isn't working for you.
Yeah, that's really great. Nice. And so the first thing that we wanted to talk a little bit more about today was the invisible workload of women. What is it and what do we do to get our time back?
This is so great. I'm really excited to talk about this. I'm really crazy passionate about it. Some of your listeners may have heard this. It's kind of I don't know if I want to call it a buzz phrase, but we're hearing it a lot more. And I say the invisible workload of women, but I just want to preface before I talk a little bit about what it is, that this relates to men and women, whatever gender you identify with, it affects you. It will affect you personally, and also it will affect likely a partner you have in your life. So if I say to you, the invisible workload of women, I don't want men to just automatically shut down and be like, oh, not for me. No, it really is. So what the invisible workload of women is, I think the simplest way to describe it is it's all of the unseen tasks and responsibilities and mental load that women put on their shoulders as added responsibility. So this is like in addition to your 9-to-5, in addition to owning your own business, in addition to all the stuff that everyone can see, this is the unseen mental load that is additional.
Okay.
So for example, there's lots of examples and I'm just going to throw out a few.
Yes,
so you guys can start to really understand this. What I have noticed is that women are typically responsible, whether it's in a partnership, marriage, family, are typically responsible for the grocery list. We're typically responsible for knowing kind of where everything is in the house. We typically organize the family functions. We figure out what's going to be for dinner. We know the laundry schedule. We plan the vacations. We make appointments for ourselves, with our partner, and for our kids and for the dogs. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So it's not really seen, but it's so there all day long.
Yeah.
So
I'm in my head, I'm like, yeah, I've never thought about it as like extra workload for me, because I feel like it's so by nature that we just do these things, right?
You're right. And that's what is interesting about it, because it's not until I think it's partially pointed out, and then where we can get curious around it and realize, oh, that's a lot. I feel like, I know for me, I don't know about you, Julia, and for your listeners, but in terms of, I just watched my mom do these things growing up,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so then I grew up and I got married and I just started doing these things. And we just don't realize it, right? It's kind of automatic. And so when we really start to think about where women are in this day and age, we are working, we are having 9-to-5s, we've got a lot going on, and the pressure and the responsibilities are more intense, but yet we still have all this unseen, invisible workload. And that is where, as I talked earlier, this is sort of becoming a buzzword, a buzz phrase, because we are getting curious around why are we so exhausted? Why are we so burnt out? Why are we so irritated? Why are we overeating? Why all the things? Because we just have too much to do.
Yeah. And we don't share that responsibility. It actually really resonates with a conversation I had the other day with a client as well, who felt really overwhelmed and stressed about her life. She has like 2 little kids, like 3 years and 11 months or so, and a husband. And she, she would always tell me, yeah, but he needs this and he needs that, and my kids need this. And I'm like, what do you need? And she was taking care of everything as well, like making the lunch and making the dinners and the breakfast and getting the kids ready. And I'm like, okay, so where can we create some shared responsibilities, or what are things that you can hand over to your partner to create more space for you? Is that how you usually approach it with your clients as well? Is that something that comes up on a regular basis for you?
It does come up on a regular basis. And that's a really good point. Like you are doing with your client, it starts with this awareness, right? Where we start to realize something's not right. I'm not totally happy. Something's not working for me. So when we get curious and realize 99.9%, particularly for women, we can talk about the invisible workload. So there's a lot of room there to start to give back the responsibility, right? To offload them. But because we have assumed them, for the most part, we just assumed them. There hasn't really been a lot of conversation about, I'll do this
and I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. We just do it. And so what happens is, as women, we feel guilty. We do not know how to undo this. We feel like we should be doing it. And what I hear a lot of the time is, and I've done this myself, I say, no, it's fine. I got it. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So to your point, I try to ask and encourage and challenge people to think of what is one thing you do that you absolutely hate. It's kind of in this invisible workload, or that is literally exhausting, or that is so taxing. So I always think of like, what's the low hanging fruit, the thing that keeps you up at night, or that when we talk about this topic that comes to mind. For me, and for a lot of women, it's meals.
Yeah.
It's the whole, like, and like your client too, the whole process of figuring out meals, because it's not just making the meal. It's, you know,
thinking about what you want to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What is our schedule this week? What's in the pantry? What don't we have? Let's make the list. Let's place the order. Let's go to the store. Let's get it. We bring it home. We unload. I mean, it's insane.
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah. Extra steps for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving this example because it's really pertinent for me. And again, a lot of women, and then is the meals. So it's about how then, okay, so let's start to make a move in the direction of advocating for yourself, setting a boundary, and giving some of this responsibility to someone else or back to someone else. And this transitions a little bit into the second part of what we're talking about today, but it's really about how to have a conversation that matters. And when I talk about having a conversation that matters, what I mean by that is conversation that helps you feel better, that allows you to get a little vulnerable, that allows you to start advocating for yourself. And so once I, encourage people to find the thing on their list that's making them crazy and exhausted and irritated.
So that's okay. So let's stop there actually for a second, because I find that's really interesting. So basically, to create awareness with women, that's what you do. You would like maybe have them write down all the responsibilities that they have at the moment, and then identify what is weighing most on them, or where they could save most of their time.
Yeah. Some people, it requires a list. It requires a little bit more reflection time. For some people, it's immediate. We know. If I say to that, what is the thing? Like for me, if someone asks me that, like I said, boom, off the top, it's meals. Some people, but there's going to be other things that come after that. It's never just one thing, but this is to kind of crack the surface.
Yeah.
But that's a great exercise that you're mentioning, because you can do maybe a brain dump. A brain dump. I've done this before, where you sit and you think, what is everything in my life that I'm responsible for? And it's fascinating.
Yeah,
because
I even think it's fascinating because the list that you just shared, from like, those household chores to like meals and birthdays, and like, I feel like that's not even things that I would first think of, so I'm really glad that you mentioned these things, because it's like they come so natural, and you just like, there's so much part of your life that you don't really count them as a responsibility.
You are so right.
Yeah.
So we minimize these, we tend to just minimize this and push it to the side, like, oh, it doesn't, it's fine. But honestly, as you're saying too, as part of this brain dump, part of this, take a blank piece of paper and really dump it out. What am I responsible for? And one way you can do this is to sort of scan morning to night. Maybe that's helpful, right? When you think about, okay, so in a day, what am I doing? I'm setting, like for me, I'm setting my kids' clothes out the morning before. I'm getting their breakfast ready. I put it in front of them. I get their pills in the morning and put it in front, all this stuff that you start, and then you go to your step. Like, what are you responsible for yourself? And then you go to the rest of the household, and then maybe go look at your calendar. I love to have clients look at their calendars, because that will jog things for you in your memory that you're not thinking about. How many doctor's appointments are you taking your kiddos to, or scheduling appointments for, or, tutoring, basketball, yoga classes for yourself? Like, I mean, just put it all down, because it's a thing, right? So that's a really good way to look at it. And then after you do that, you can sort of, again, some people are going to get this right away, but some people are going to have to reflect on it a little bit and think, I actually kind of hate doing this, or I don't enjoy this.
Exactly. What do you enjoy doing? What do you not? Because I was thinking as well, when you were talking about meals, that some women would probably be like, I love cooking and I absolutely do not want to give that away, and then you could even think about, okay, but maybe you can still help with the grocery list or something like that, right?
That's a good point, because you're right. We all enjoy different things. I love to cook. It is a passion of mine. but it's the mental bandwidth of figuring out what we're going to cook and getting it to the house. And so I love that you pointed that out, because it can be a component of the thing.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I don't need to offload taking my kids to the physical appointments, but how can I, you know, offload or change how the appointments are scheduled, or who does that?
So now, okay, so this is really interesting, because, okay, you started to talk about the topic of, okay, how can we have these powerful conversations, right? And so in my head, I'm thinking about my clients, and they're like, you know, they are sometimes in a partnership with someone that also has a super extremely stressful job. And then, you know, I can already hear them say, but they're also really busy and stressed. So, you know, I don't want to put more things on their plate either. You know, how can we, like, what would you tell them?
I love that. And that's reality. Every situation is different. Every partnership is different. And it doesn't have to be, you know, of course, with a romantic partner, but I like to remind people, women and men, and, you know, that a lot of times we assume that the other person just has too much going on. They're too busy. They're not like this would just kind of set them off, or this would push them over the edge if we, you know, or that there's no solution. And so, you know, I look at sort of the ladder of inference. And so we can really climb up that ladder fast and assume that there's no solution. We can't do anything. The other person can't help us. And so to sort of bring that down, one of the tools, this is very specific but tangible, is I talk to my clients a lot around having the conversation with their partner and using the verbiage, because I love this. Let's talk about the meals again, just because that's easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Saying to your partner, can I chat with you about something? And if they're a good, nice person, they should say yes. And if they say no, we have another problem. But, you know, saying to the partner, hey, I want to chat with you about something. Great. So here's how I would model it. I would say, I'm creating, you know, I'm really stressed about meals at home. And I'm creating a story. And that story is that I'm fully responsible for those meals, and then I need to be responsible for them. And so, do you think that's true or not? And 90% of the time, the partner has relatively no clue that this is taking up so much time. And 90% of the time, they're going to say to you, no, that's not true. I don't think you should be responsible for everything. Or, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Or, oh my gosh, really? So it's just a kind of a neat, very neutral, non-accusatory, curious way to bring this up, to advocate for yourself, that for me doesn't seem like too scary. And it's just getting curious. So that's one step. And then it invites a continued dialogue after that. So the example I have of having this conversation with my husband, when I told him, I'm making up a story that I have to be responsible for everything that has to do with the meals. He said, no, I don't think so. And I go, okay, this is good. So
I was just waiting for you to say that.
I'm like, okay. So now I can get rid of that narrative in my head that it all is on me. And then the next thing you do is talk about what are some potential options and solutions, or what part of this thing is that you absolutely want to get rid of or not do anymore. So the solution that, you know, I said, I love cooking. I told my husband, I still love to cook, but it's all the other stuff. So here is what I know are some options. I said, there's these meal kits out there. They deliver them. I've done a little bit of research. So I recommend maybe coming with one or two solutions or options if you can. And so we've started doing that because it's a quality of life issue, and it's this invisible workload that I've been able to say something has to give. So it's a partnership, but it costs money too. So you've got to look at all the areas of it too. But I think that's a good way to start.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was also just thinking, you know, if the partner, like if you already both super busy, then there's also options of, hiring people to help you with things. I think this is always the last option maybe that we think about, because we think, oh, I should be doing all of these different things, right? I think there's a lot of shoulds involved in that. And I'm just thinking of even like household chores of like cleaning, right? I think I'm just thinking of myself, of how much time I spend cleaning my house. I'm always like shocked. And so sometimes I would hire a cleaner, like, even though I'm by myself, I would be like, okay, sometimes I just need someone to come in and I'm too busy and I don't want to have, like, I want to just keep that headspace for myself today. And I just want to have those 3 hours that they come and clean the house for, going and doing something for myself, right? And I think, sometimes to weigh off this, like, okay, it's maybe $150 for a cleaner, but it will give me, like, how much worth and value is that time for me to not have to do that, right? And to not feel exhausted after doing that, and to not feel resentful towards my partner after that too, because he or she didn't help me at all doing these things, So I think it's really helpful to think about, how can we just create more space for ourselves, and where can we get help? So,
and I think you make a great point, is that we're talking about so many different things. One is, and one solution is, who else can do this service outside of this household that we can pay? I have also seen, and I've done this myself, swapping services, or if you have something that you can offer to someone and they have something you need, whether it's, cleaning, running errands,
even like kids, like I remember, like my sister has a child, a daughter, and sometimes she would be like, talk with her friends, and then, they would have one afternoon with the kids at their place. And so my sister can do things. And then on the other hand, my sister would take one of the kids, and then the other mom has like time for herself. And I think that's also so powerful. I love that idea of swapping. I think that's awesome.
It is really powerful. And it's also, the other thing too, is that nothing is really permanent in this. It doesn't have to be permanent.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be for the rest of your life. You need to buy the groceries now.
You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to say, I thought this was what I wanted, but it's not really working. So can we have a touch base on this? I mean, think about in your life, life and business, when I've hired people to help in my business, and then it didn't work out. At the time I was like, this is the solution.
Yes. Oh, I love this as well, for sure. I've definitely been there multiple times already in my business, where I'm like, I'm gonna take this person, and 3 weeks later I would be like, it's not really what I've been envisioning. One more thing that I have, 2 more things that I want to mention. One thing is that sometimes I have clients as well that tell me they have all these things on, like all these to-dos in their head, and it just kind of overwhelms them throughout the whole week, because they kind of procrastinate. They don't really want to do it, but at the same time, they know they have to take care of it at some point. And so I did this exercise actually once with a client, and she started to write down all of these things that are on her mind on a list. And then once a week, on a Thursday or Friday, she would block 1 or 2 hours on her calendar, and she would just do it all in this like 1 or 2 hours. And that would give her more mind space for the rest of the week to be like, I have this one day, this 1 hour on Thursday where I'm going to take care of all of these different things, and otherwise I can just park it. So I think that's really helpful as well for compartmentalizing like that pressure.
Batching it.
Batching it. And also, I think for me, sometimes it just puts pressure on me, because I'm like, I should not forget it. Like, I know I need to do this. I don't want to do this right now, but I have to do it at some point. And I feel like just kind of writing these things down can be really powerful. And I was thinking about a friend of mine who's from India, and in India they get a lot of help, right? Because the costs are really low. And so she would have a driver and someone that cleans and someone that cooks and someone that all of these different things, right? And I remember when she moved to the US, she was really overwhelmed, and we had these conversations where she's like, oh my God, she's like, now I have to cook by myself and I have to do all of these different things all by myself. And she's like, that's so much extra. She's like, how are you doing this? She's like, this is really overwhelming. And it was a good, I think, also kind of mirror to be like, oh, I'm just doing this all the time without even thinking about it anymore, because it has become such a normal part of my life. But it is actually this invisible workload that we have on top of all of the other things that we're already taking care of.
And what an interesting perspective that she has. And then for you to think it's sort of a reality, but a reality check too, that we, here in the US in particular, of course, where we both live right now is that we're so autonomous, and we're not a multi-generational living in the same household type.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of on an island. And if you don't say something, nobody knows. Nobody knows. And we all think everyone's doing fine, but nobody is. Like we're all,
all overwhelmed in our own
so
ways.
as challenging and hard as it is, a little bit of vulnerability can go so far. And that vulnerability, if you start with a person that you love and trust, that is close to you, whether it's your mom or your sister or your partner or a girlfriend or a coach, if you have one, to be like, I'm drowning or I'm struggling with this, you are going to feel better. I mean, hand to God, it does get better, but it's just leaning into that vulnerability. It's everything, just starting with it. After you're validated and after you realize, oh my gosh, I am not alone. This invisible workload is so real.
Yeah.
It's not like it was in the 1950s or 30s or 40s where women were more at home. What happened is we still kept all of our responsibilities, but now we have careers and we have pressure and we have other things going on, but we never really got rid of the other stuff or didn't know what to do with it. And so
exactly. So here we are now doing both, right?
Yeah.
Doing both jobs. I really liked your question. Maybe you can repeat it again, because I thought it was really powerful. That question, that first opening question you ask your partner when you're starting this conversation. Can you say that?
So what I do is assume, even though we shouldn't assume, but I have to think about, this is in my head. This is my story and my narrative. I'm going to walk into this conversation. My husband's name is Vladimir. I'm like, Vladimir, I need to have a chat with you. Okay. So that's how I first started. And then I always start with, I'm creating a story. And that story is, because what it does is it really in no way is attacking that other person. There's no way you can, because if you come to someone, I'm a social worker. I know how this works. If you come into someone and say, you are not helping me, it's over, we're done.
Exactly. Defenses are up. Yeah, for sure.
Done. So walking into, I'm creating a story, and that story is that I have to be the one to do X, Y, and Z, or that I can't choose something different. But you can use that verbiage in anything. It doesn't even have to be this invisible workload. It can really be anything. I use it with my husband all the time, but then it just shows I'm owning my thoughts. And then I'm going to give you a chance, an opportunity to tell your truth without judgment. And it's the coolest thing. And it reduces so much stress and so much. We just don't argue as we've shifted our narrative that way. But I encourage you, try it. You can try it you try it with your boss too. If somebody, I'm creating a story.
I'm even thinking with parents, like, I'm even thinking again, like, of clients that, maybe are a single parent and they rely on their parents to help. And then they also create that story around, oh, I'm already asking them all the time. I feel super bad. Like, I would like to do this, but can I? And to do this, and I know that these conversations can be super hard as well, to ask for additional help, right? To be like, I'm creating this story that I'm asking you for help all the time. Like, how
that you're mad at me.
Yeah, exactly. I really love that. I think that's a really powerful phrase.
I love it too. It's just gentle and kind and curious. And it's really leading with self-advocating, right? But also a little bit of love. It's just neutral. It's nice. It's light. It keeps things pretty light.
Yeah.
So try it.
Yeah. Thank you. How do you feel is your work-life balance? How did that shift happen for you from being a social worker for so many years to starting your own business?
Oh, I love this question. So being a social worker is exhausting mentally. Particularly when I had kids, that's really when I was like, this is not sustainable. So starting my own business is fantastic, because the thing that I value more than anything is freedom. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. Probably resonates with you.
Flexibility.
Yeah. We want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. So the life satisfaction is there with owning my own business, and the freedom is there. And so that's wonderful. I still feel like working with my clients now, I'm doing social work. That's a lot of what I'm doing. but I get to choose who I work with now. And I can be real, and it's just very different. So my work-life balance is great now. I work a few hours during the day. My work hours are like 10 to 2-ish, and then I'm done.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's great. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would never go back to a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I'm
I
unemployable.
was talking with another podcast guest about this this week actually, and she made such a powerful point that I've never thought about before. But she's like, we entrepreneurs, we take way higher risk because we're not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. But she's like, but what we trade for that is our flexibility. Like we get so much flexibility from taking a higher risk on owning our own business. And I was like, yeah, that's so powerful. She says that. And then I think, and I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts about that as well. But I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs are still working themselves to the ground and don't use that flexibility that they have to actually create a very healthy lifestyle. What do you think?
I agree with you. So it's like, we're so flexible that the work never ends.
Yeah, well, and we're also so passionate, and maybe also so right. It's also, I think, a fear factor of being like, will I get business? Like, do I need to do more? Right. And so you kind of feel a lot more accountable, obviously, and committed to your own business and to making money and to not taking a break and not taking a vacation and all these different things.
And it's interesting because more doesn't always, like, more output from you doesn't always get more business. I'm sure you've learned that too.
Yeah,
that
sure.
I've learned a few tools where when I feel anxious and I'm like kind of worried about the numbers or finding new, the marketing, all this stuff. If I get my journal and do a brain dump and clear my head about everything I'm anxious about, that helps. And then I've learned a few things for myself. I'll write down in my journal, I trust that the universe will provide my ideal clients, and that, and I get specific about the number of clients I want. And then I close that book, and then I have to go walk outside of my house and walk around the block and remove myself. I mean, these are things, because if we don't set boundaries around our time and our energy, it will never end.
Exactly.
And even if
nobody will do it for you, nobody will ever say you should really take a break because you're really doing a lot, No.
And the last, one of the last things I want to say about that is that, running your own business, or this invisible workload stuff that we're talking about, what it can equate to is, what we call energy leaks. We're leaking energy in different, like just little bit.
100%.
It's a trickle, and we think, oh, it's fine, or it's not that big of a deal, but it trickles out.
Yeah.
And energy is, and we at some point we have to. It will affect other things.
Yeah.
Our health, or all these things that we know so much about.
Yeah.
But
we're like, oh, I'm sick again. I don't even know why.
Yeah.
But then I feel like, we are talking about this invisible workload and about just how much, we kind of cram into our day. Well, how are you supposed to have even the mental capacity to be like, okay, now I have to do something for myself? And I talk with people about this a lot, and with entrepreneurs as well, and friends. Where it's like, we know we should do it, and we know we would feel so much better if we exercise, but then you're mentally so drained at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm sure that so many people can relate to this. You're mentally so drained at the end of the day that you can't, convince yourself anymore to go outside, or it's like hard, right? So do it in the morning, or from even that learning and from that awareness of, oh, I'm mentally drained in the evening, do it anyway. Do it 10 minutes. Like, I feel like putting like really small numbers on it to be like, okay, I'm just going to do it a little bit at least, so I can tick a box, then that could be really powerful too.
You're right.
So do the self-care.
I talk a lot, and I do this myself too, but what you're talking about too is also looking at this should versus need dynamic, in your head. Like, whatever comes to you, I should be doing this. I should be pushing harder. I should be whatever. But what I really actually need is, and you're usually going to get a different answer.
Yeah. I should,
So
nice. Or then also like, I get to do this instead of like, I should do this, I think like all three are really important. I need to, and I get to.
Yeah. It seems so simple, but this stuff works. It does help. We just got to try something.
Yeah. Sure. I think that's the thing as well, the trying part, the actually getting into action part. I always like to reinforce that as well. What do you do? I'm curious, what do you do for like daily practices to kind of keep, your mental health healthy?
Great question. I move my body, and I do it in a way that is not tied to weight loss. So what I mean by that is, less punitive, more around just move to remove the stress.
Yeah.
Just move for quality of life, not around you should be doing this. Which, women we're taught so much around, around our body. So that's really what I've done. And it's so healthy, is just move to feel better. I also, like I said, I love to cook. So even at night at dinner, I love it. When I am in like a mood, when I'm in my back seat and I've like kind of had it and I'm irritable because I'm on social media too much and because I'm I go to a gourmet grocery store and I'm obsessed and I'm totally reinvented. I don't do that every day, but, and then I also just, I have really great people in my life. I have a great husband. I have great kids. And, I also read. I love to read. So,
Let's talk about reading. Do you have a book that completely changed your life or changed your perspective on certain things? Maybe that's something that you're reading over and over and over again because you always find another amazing snippet out of it.
Yes, I actually have this book next to me.
Nice.
And so we'll hold it up. But so this book was my 2020 book of the year. I always pick a book of the year that changed me. Okay. And so I gift it to all of my one-on-one clients until my book that I'm writing is done. But it's called Burnout. Have you read it? Oh, you have to. Every single woman needs to read this book. It's called Burnout. And it's by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. They're sisters. PhD, it's database, but it really talks about, it says the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. So it really is, there's so many ahas in there. The book will probably, once women read it, you get a little mad and then you're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And then you're like, oh, I'm changing this. And it's great. It talks about the patriarchy, it talks about body shame. It talks about just how we got here. And it's so good. I love it.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. Well, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I'm sure that a lot of people will take very, very good notes about the next conversation they have with their partner about the invisible workload and how they can maybe offload some of the things to someone else to create more space. So thank you for bringing up this really, really powerful topic. I really appreciate it. And how can people reach out to you or get in touch with you if they would be interested to work with you? Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a treat. And we've covered a lot of really, really good. So there's a lot of nuggets in here. So social media, Instagram's my favorite. It's girlonfire.co. And I have a freebie on my website for anyone who this resonates with. It's 30 ways to say no. And that's on girlonfire.biz/say no. Great. Thank you so much. Well, I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I hope to see you again soon. All right. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Bye. Bye.